Bertie Ahern has protested that he couldn't possibly have known 5 years ago what Judge Flood knows now, but new voices are appearing to point out that Ahern had plenty of warning. Journalist Jimmy Gearan is a former Fianna Fáil constituency treasurer, and 6 years ago he got a tip-off about Burke.
Information was made available to me which indicated that Ray Burke had been the recipient of a payment which, when it became public knowledge, it would certainly have created problems for him as a minister and would have created problems for the Fianna Fáil administration. I contacted the constituency assistant, Celia Larkin, gave her a brief outline without going into specific details, and then Bertie contacted me and arranged for Chris Wall to call and see me. I can't say what the detailed discussion between Chris Wall and Bertie Ahern were, but Bertie did contact me to say that the matter had been looked into and thanked me for contacting him, and I felt certainly that I would have thought I had convinced Chris as to the seriousness of the allegations, and I felt had they been properly investigated, it wouldn't have, Ray Burke would not have been appointed to government.
And tonight Albert Reynolds has added his voice. As Taoiseach, he initiated an inquiry into allegations of corruption in the planning process. PrimeTime asked him whether he offered any advice about Ray Burke when Ahern took over. He replied, "When Bertie Ahern took over as party leader, I told him everything I knew, and I instructed the then Minister for Justice Deputy Maura Geoghegan-Quinn to do likewise regarding all relevant files in her department. I did not offer him any advice on any appointments, as it would be totally inappropriate to do so. The choices had to be his." The ill-fated appointment of Ray Burke as Minister for Foreign Affairs unravelled within weeks. Bertie Ahern's defence is that he did all he reasonably could to check out the rumours before the appointment. He famously said that he'd been up every tree in North Dublin. And in May '97 he told the Irish Times that, "I have gone to that member and gone through it in detail on 4 separate occasions. Insofar as I possibly can be, I am satisfied." But when he spoke about this in the Dáil a year later, it appeared he hadn't asked Ray Burke whether he'd received this money.
Can I ask you, did you specifically ask Ray Burke if he had received monies from Mr. Murphy, or from JMSC? And I'm equating the two for the purpose of this, that JMSC and Murphy's are the same. First question, did you ask Ray Burke, did he receive money from JMSC/Murphy? And if so, what was his reply?
In relation to the first question, it was my discussions with Ray Burke at any time before appointing minister were on the basis that he had done nothing wrong. I don't recall if I particularly asked about any individual company. I was asking in connection with any donations he would have received, was there any wrongdoing?
Did you specifically ask Ray Burke before Dermot Ahern went to London, did he get money from Murphy's?
No, I didn't. I was checking this one case. I had asked Ray Burke, had he got, in the terms of donations, had he got donations and was there anything wrong? In terms of that, Ray Burke had made it very clear that any money that he got were donations to his constituency and that there was no wrongdoing whatsoever involved in any of those.
It is important now that maybe Mr. Ahern comes out and clarifies exactly what inquiries he made. I think it's also important for the PD and for Mary Harney that she finds out exactly what happened at that time, because she is tied into the whole decision at that stage as well. She obviously had voiced some misgivings about the appointment of Mr. Burke. Mr. Ahern had assured her that everything was okay, so I suppose by extension she is involved in it as well, so she will want to know, I'm sure.
What's also confusing is the Taoiseach's changing story on whether he knew on the day he appointed Ray Burke that Burke had got money from JMSE. Here's what he told RTE Radio's This Week in September '97.
I asked Ray Burke back in the summer before I set up the cabinet about this story about the 30,000, and he assured me at that particular time that he had received this money, but he did nothing for the company and he was involved in nothing wrong.
So Bertie Ahern knew when he appointed Ray Burke that Burke had got £30,000 from JMSE, but he'd been assured there was nothing untoward about it. That seems clear. Except that the following May, some 9 months after that interview, he appears to have told the Dáil the complete opposite. He was speaking about an inquiry carried out by Dermot Ahern just before Ray Burke was appointed minister.
When he did those investigations on my part, what he reported back was that Mr. Murphy denied that he gave any money. And the day I appointed Mr. Burke, the information I was working on from my own sources and from his sources, from his report, which is now with the tribunal, will be public knowledge in due course, is that no money was given. And I'd just like to put that I'd like to put on the record, because in fairness to Deputy Chairman Ahern, I asked him to do a job, and so far as he could do the job, he did the job. He travelled to London at my request to conduct an interview with...
But the Taoiseach says it's clear from that clip that he was not denying he knew Ray Burke had got money on the day he appointed him. Rather, he was saying that Joseph Murphy denied giving him money. If he didn't mean to create doubt about whether he knew Ray Burke got that money, one or two of his other statements are also confusing.
My concern was, just to be absolutely clear, was that if he got a very substantial contribution, which wasn't being made clear to me that he got, it was not clear to me, and it wasn't clear on trying to check it through Bailey and trying to check it through JSME. It was not clear whether he ever got that contribution, and my concern was, A, did he get it, and B, was there anything wrong with it? I cannot recall if I said to him, did you get money from Murphy's or JSME? I was more worried, what was all that about? And I think in terms of any discussion I would have had with him, that he didn't tell me about that contribution.
The deputies present in the Dáil that night weren't the only ones to be given this confused picture. Dermot Ahern himself stood up in the Dáil a week later, and clearly he had also been given this impression, and he still held it.
To the best of my knowledge, at the time of the appointment of Mr. Burke, the Taoiseach, having made all due inquiries which he could reasonably have made, had discovered no proof whatsoever that any payments, improper or otherwise, had been made to Mr. Burke at that time.
It seems that at the very least Bertie Ahern was extremely unclear when he appointed Ray Burke about whether Burke had got any money from JMSE. Maybe that's because he hadn't actually asked him. But then how are we to explain Mary Harney's statement to the Flood Tribunal a year later? She had also spoken to Bertie Ahern in the fortnight before Burke was appointed, and as told by her to the Flood Tribunal, Bertie Ahern seems to have been perfectly clear about exactly what happened. She was asked, before Mr. Burke was appointed to the government, did Mr. Bertie Ahern give you certain information relating to Mr. Burke and this alleged payment? She replied, yes, he told me that he had fully investigated the matter, that Ray Burke had received £30,000 from Mr. Gogarty JMSE, that he had retained £20,000 for his own election campaign in the Dublin North constituency, and that he had forwarded £10,000 to the Fianna Fáil headquarters. Bertie Ahern fully accepts that Mary Harney's evidence to the Flood Tribunal was accurate, but he says it doesn't conflict with his own accounts. It's vital for the Taoiseach that he seemed to have investigated the rumours properly before he appointed Ray Burke, and it's vital that he was accurate in what he told the Dáil about all of this. If he can't satisfy people on these issues, then October could prove to be even more stormy than September for the Taoiseach.
The Taoiseach Bertie Ahern has issued the following statement to PrimeTime. The Taoiseach confirms that on numerous occasions prior to the Dáil debate on the 28th of May 1998, he had publicly acknowledged that he was aware that Mr. Burke had been paid a sum of £30,000 by a building firm. He disclosed this matter to the Taoiseach prior to the formation of the government. The Taoiseach's actual words in the Dáil on the 28th of May 1998 were referring to the fact that Mr. Joseph Murphy of Joseph Murphy Structural Engineering had denied he'd given any money to Mr. Burke. There is no inconsistency between the Taoiseach's often stated public statements and what the Taoiseach said at the Flood Tribunal. The Taoiseach was assured by Mr. Burke that it was a political donation, that he had done nothing wrong. In the light of the Flood Tribunal report, it is now clear that the Taoiseach and the Dáil were deliberately misled by Mr. Burke, and that his conduct deserves all of the public criticism made of him. The Taoiseach repeats his disgust at Mr. Burke's betrayal of the public trust and reiterates his condemnations of Mr. Burke's conduct.